Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. As always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information, to send in ideas, and to be able to participate in all the different things that we provide at CourtneyAnderson.com. So today, our show is part of our MYTH Warriors series. And of course, our MYTH Warriors series is dedicated, it is intended for, and it is focused on those of us who are interested, curious, and want to know what's real and what's a myth. What's something that's real, meaning it might be a fact or it might be something I want to investigate as potentially being accurate, versus something that is literally a myth, a falsehood, a lie, a fallacy. We need to know. So today we're talking about something that I have really thought through because it's something that comes up over and over and over again in so many different things that I do. And the main topic, title, of course, is only 6% of all individuals in the U.S. earn $100,000 a year? Really? Really? So our episode title, again, only 6% of all individuals in the U.S. earn $100,000 a year? Really? Really? And so, of course, what we're doing is this. There's so much misinformation. And there's so many things that we sort of go through our lives thinking, well, this is, accurate. And so we sort of build a lot of our decisions around this concept, and before we know it, we're in a situation where perhaps we're accurate, perhaps something is something that we want to believe in, but we may be in a situation where we're dealing with something that actually is a myth. And so I get so many questions and so many inquiries and so much discussion around the goal, of course, of all the programs that I provide and that tie into the different services is to help people surpass their goals, right? So I want to meet my goal, but I want to surpass my goal. It's not enough just to meet it. I want to go beyond that. And so many things are impacted by our understanding of economic options. And so when we're sitting around and we're thinking, should I finish some sort of educational opportunity, whether it's high school or a university degree or graduate school or specific types of professional degrees, or should I take this job or that job, or should I learn different skills, or should I relocate, or all these types of things. So many of these decisions sort of relate back to financial and personal economic issues, and of course it makes sense, right? At some level, we have to make sure that our own needs are met, and then at some point we want to begin to assess beyond our needs, what would be our desires, right? What would be our dreams? And so having some kind of anchoring and understanding about the reality on the ground. Again, pragmatism is one of the things that's just sort of a foundational principle of everything that I do in all the professional services. And so here we are looking at this idea, trying to understand how many people in the United States earn $100,000 US or more. And we're just using this because this kind of idea of the six-figure income, the six figures, is out in popular culture. It's mentioned constantly in all types of media or discussions, and it's sort of just a line, kind of to help people begin to think through, okay, what are my needs, and then what are my desires and wants beyond those needs. And so this idea, six figures, right? So what we're talking about, right? 100,000 is starting the six figures, and whether or not that's something that is common. Is it something that kind of everybody has? Is that something that if I don't make six figures, I should feel that I have in some way, failed to meet sort of the average expectation? If I do make six figures, what does it mean? Is that average? Should I be should I be stressed out if I make six figures and so that's starting at the 100,000 and then moving up to the 999, right? So somewhere between 100,000 and right under $1 million, there's a huge spread. If you're in that group, are you just sort of average? And if so, is it anything where you should again feel stressed or worried if maybe you feel like you can't make ends meet? And if that's a normal average thing, if it's a regular experience. So we don't know how to make decisions unless we have some data. And again, this is very much the perspective of someone who is a business person, myself, and of course who has business degrees and teaches business in graduate schools to students, and then of course does business consulting to organizations and business education around the world. Also a lawyer. So I tend to look at making decisions, and I want to look and get information. I'm going to call that data, so I can kind of figure out, even if it's something simple, right? Hey, do I need an umbrella? I need data. So what do? I'll look online and see, hey, what's the weather report? Does it say that there's going to be rain? If I don't see that there's going to be any rain, and I'm based the majority of my time in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we get very little rain. It's one of the driest cities in this part of the world. So, I check and see. Sometimes I'll look out the window. Oh, it looks like it might rain. I see some clouds. Okay, that's some data, right? So it's observational. Or I might go, like I said, online and check with some either local news or weather, credible source to check and see, and then I'll make a decision. Okay, yeah, it says that there's a 60% chance of rain. Okay, I'm going to bring my umbrella. If I look and see, 0%, and then I know that I'm not going to bring my umbrella because it's just more stuff, right? Data is not necessarily in and of itself, from my analysis and perspective in life, a bad thing. How do you make decisions if you don't know anything? So I wouldn't concur that we should sort of sit in a room, if we don't have access to a window and we don't have access to either turn a television on or radio or look on the internet and see what the weather report is, I think then we're not probably going to be in the best position to decide whether or not we need to bring the umbrella because we don't know. And that's the approach we're taking. And everything that we do, all the programs I put forward, all the different professional services I provide, I need data. Now, I'm never going to get complete data. I'm never going to have perfect data. So it's possible that I look and I look out the window, it looks clear, I look out the weather report, says, no rain, and then boom, I go out, and a few hours later I'm out, and this huge storm moves in, and then it rains, and I don't have an umbrella. It's possible. That happens. In fact, recently, I was leaving the store. That reminded me. And didn't have an umbrella because I didn't see that the data indicated I needed one. Walked out of the store, boom, caught in the rain. Rained all over me. Got home nice and wet. So you never have perfect data, but you should at least try to get some data, right? And that's what the purpose of everything that I do, and certainly Myth Warriors, is what we're doing. Myth Warriors are out there trying to decide, trying to figure out, is there any data available? Where would we look for some? Might this be something that's accurate or not accurate? And so here we're trying to figure out this whole six-figure idea, again, U.S. dollar based, that's sort of a demarcation of something. I don't know. So we're going to find out. And we're trying to look at it from all angles. So if I make less than six figures a year in income individually, does that mean, again, that I'm just sort of average, or does it mean that I'm below average? Maybe everybody else is making that. So it's hard to make decisions about going to school, to get, credentials or professional licensing, to move, to accept a job. It's hard to figure all this stuff out if you don't know sort of the playing field, right? What's the average person in the U.S. make? That would be interesting for me to know so that I could begin to figure out, should I accept a job that's offered me, $31,000 a year? Is that good? Is it bad? I don't know. Who do you ask? I wouldn't go ask the people at the place that are offering me a job because they have a very specific interest, right? Like to maintain the lowest possible labor cost while getting the best quality employees. So it's not in their interest necessarily to talk to me about what everybody in the country makes, right? They're just talking about their specific company and their job. My individual anecdotal perspective on all this is my perspective is that there's just so much misunderstanding. And I think that most of it is that people think that the six-figure a year income is easily attainable, and that either most people have it or almost most people, and that if you and I don't make six figures, and in some kind of way we're failures because it's kind of average. That's what you expect. I think that's what I hear. And so when you look in the show notes, you'll see that I have a link. Where would you go to find out how much money people make? Again, I said a few minutes ago, I wouldn't necessarily just ask people at a job, right? What do you think everybody in your country makes? Either A, they don't know, and B, even if they did, they're probably not going to tell you because it's not in their interest. So is there any kind of entity that's sort of job and purpose is to go around collecting, literally, it's sort of kind of purpose, to go around collecting information from people in the United States about how much money they make? It has some sort of process to try to verify accuracy. Who could that be? Oh, it's the United States government, the federal government. Federal government is interested in the whole country, so not in just one city or one part of a city or one congressional district or one state or one region or whatever. They're the whole country. They need to get the big picture. What's going on in this big old country? And so they're going to go around and have different agencies, a whole bunch of different agencies, and their job is to sort of find out things about the nation and then administer services to the nation, right? Big picture. And one of the things that they do is they have a sort of a data group, right, who they go around dealing with specific types of data. Now, the United States Census is a federal government agency whose sort of purpose is to go out there and get information, right? And they're the ones I went to. So the United States Census is going to have the answer, or it's going to have an answer. So it's debatable whether or not you agree with how the census gets information, right? We talked about earlier that I'm never going to have perfect data. So I'm never going to have 100% guarantee it's not going to rain. I don't need my umbrella. Same thing is going to be true of any other data in life, especially something that's not in a laboratory with really set and controlled conditions for data collection. So literally, the United States is a pretty large geographical region. Going out and finding out data on kind of the goal is how much does sort of the average person make? That is not easy. So it's not perfect, but it's going to give us potentially some credible source, and the overwhelming consensus of the society is that there's some level of transparency in the process, and that there's some potential validity to some of the numbers. Now, there's some people who would argue that none of the numbers are worth anything. There are other people who would argue the numbers are as close to perfect as possible, and then a lot of people in the middle. We don't have, I would argue, any other primary sources that I would start with, right? So primary source, and then there are other secondary sources certainly that are reputable. But let's just sort of big picture. We're not doing statistical analysis on this or PhD program. What we're trying to do is just sort of figure out, hey, am I average? Am I below average? Am I above average? And what does that mean for the decisions I make? How do I view myself, and how do I view my decisions and my choices? So again, we got a big old country, relatively speaking, geographically, and we got a pretty reasonable population in this country. So we've got somewhere around 311 million or so people. It's a lot of people, relatively speaking. Many countries have many, many more. Many countries have over 1 billion people. So America's puny by some standards, but relative to the size of most nations, are on the larger side. So what do we do? All right, so I put the link in the show notes, as you'll see. Go find out for yourself as we talk about it every single one of our programs. Again, there are questions and potential solutions, and that's what I try to focus on providing. I don't have the answer to anything. I'll give you an answer based on, and I'll tell you how I arrived at that answer. But your job is to go figure out what's the answer for you, because you have a whole different set of individual issues and factors that you got to make decisions. So I'm walking through the process, right? So a primary source would be the Census Bureau, the United States Census Bureau. I've provided a link to that. It's part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. You need trying to find out, look, am I average or below average? How many people make six figures? Is that something that I should expect? And if I don't make it, I'm upset. Or if I make more than six figures and I'm still financially stressed out and feel like I can't pay my bills, is that normal? Just because everybody does it? Let's find out. So big picture, I've gone to the United States Census. And a couple of things you have to remember. there's so much information, right? Because you have all these people, so roughly 311 million people. And how do you count income? Now, it may sound simple, right? But it isn't that simple, because the government has a lot of decisions that are made based on what they call households and what they call family income. So what they'll do is they do a lot of work to try to find out how many people live in a household. It doesn't have to be a house. I mean, an apartment, a trailer, doesn't matter. But how many people live there? The challenge with that is that number is, not set in stone. So some people are living together in a household and they're roommates. Some people live together in a household and they're dating. Some people live together in a household and they have, 5 children together, but they break up right after the census, counts them as a household, and somebody moves out. People move in and move out all the time. Whether they're legally married or dating, or, we're just trying to share expenses, or, where they were friends. Who knows, right? So that number's in flux. Okay, but it's important because a lot of government programs that we are not talking about, whether it's, government programs for people with low income, for children who need services, food, nutrition, things like this. A lot of the programs are predicated on these questions of household and family size, income, and all of this. That has nothing to do with my question, because I'm focused on the person, individual people. So when you look through the census information, be aware that you're going to see a ton of data about household income, because it's very common, and that's what is often shared in the media. That number is exactly what it sounds like. How many people are in the household, and then they add up what each of those people individually make, and then call that individual household income. So I could have 3 people in a household. Right? Maybe I got a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and the girlfriend's mom. And they're all adults, and they're all working. And so the 3 of them all are working, and each of them are pulling in, about $34,000 a year. So together, all 3 people, with all of the money they make at all 3 of their jobs, together make right over $100,000, okay? That, though, is dependent on all 3 of them staying together. So I'm not talking about a household, because you could go combine what you make right now with any number of people, and you could get to a $100,000 household sort of overnight. You just need to find other people, and whatever number you have, add up whatever numbers they have, and keep adding more people until you get to $100,000. That is not at all my question, because that's a totally different perspective on income and on options. Is it an option to go do that and say, hey, look, I make $25,000. If I want a household income of $100,000, I just need to go find 3 more people, each of whom make $25,000, and we'll all live together. We'll have a household income of $100,000. That will work. That's one way to do it. I've never done that personally, just me. I just have focused on raising my own individual income to whatever level that I would like it to be, instead of going out and just combining my income with other people. But either of those are fine goals. But our question is, how many individuals earn over $100,000 a year? But I'm sharing all this about the households and the family income, because when you start to look through the census data, there's so much of it. What you're looking for is individual income, personal income, not what one person who makes $25,000 can do when they add 3 more people who make $25,000 to get to $100,000, because that's a totally different approach. And that means that you don't have to change anything about how much money you earn, or your education, or your skills, or relocate, or anything. All you got to do is go out and find the 3 other people, or 4 other people, or 2 other people, or depending on your number. You just need to go find the other people to make the money to make your total add together equal to be 100. That is not at all the question I'm addressing, but when you start moving through the data, you're going to see a lot about household and family size, and it distracts from the real issue. My discussion is about what one individual person, you, can do to get your income individually where you want it to be. Of course, at any time you can go out and find other people that have income and add that to yours. But again, remember that's going to be dependent on that relationship holding. So holding that in that the people want to live together in that household together, that family unit, and also holding in that nobody becomes permanently disabled or dies, because that'll ruin the whole household income. And that's fluid, and that's also beyond our individual control, what other people do, right, if they leave or if something happens to them. So I'm focusing on us as individuals. All right, so you'll see a whole bunch of information, and the big picture bottom line is exactly what's in the headline of the show episode, is about 6.6% actually of all individuals. So I'm including all genders, okay, male and female. I'm including all ages that the census is counting, and the census has all these different rules, okay? So they're not counting people who are younger than 15 years old, okay? One, we're not supposed to have child labor in this country, with very few exceptions, especially under 15. So we're talking 15 and up, okay? So that's kind of all ages in there, right? 15 and up. And we're talking all genders, we're talking all different ethnicities, we're talking all different racial groups, we're talking all different national origin, we're talking all of it. This is the whole big picture I'm talking about. Of all of the people, men and women, people who are 25, people who are 55, people who live in the West Coast, people who live in the Midwest, people who live in the Deep South, people who live in the Northwest, what we're talking about is everybody added all together to the best of the census information. Most recent data is about 6.6% of all of everybody added up makes over the six-figure threshold. Being more specific, 0.6%. That is not everybody. So 100%, right, is the total. That means if you earn $100,000 or more, let's just stick with the $100,000 threshold. Once you hit $100,000, you are earning more than 93% of people in this country. You are earning more than 93% of people in the United States. So go walk around. For every 100 people that are out there, 93 of them, you make more money than. Only 6.6 out of every 100 people is going to be in the $100,000 and up group. 6 out of 100. That's a small little teeny tiny percentage, relatively speaking. It's not average. Average would be somewhere 50%, right? Middle. When you go through the census data and you're wondering, well, what's the average person make? Okay? All right, so this 100,000 thing sounds kind of high. That's only 6.6% of people that are going to be in that group. So if you are $100,000 or over and you say that you can't make ends meet, then you're not being realistic. Now, you could earn any amount of money and still not be able to make ends meet. You could make $30 million a year and not be able to make ends meet if your bills are too high. If you're making $100,000 or more and we're part of this program and this discussion right now and you're having financial trouble, then you have made very inappropriate financial decisions and you've got to reevaluate. Now, what tends to happen, though, is we judge ourselves as humans by the people around us, our social groups. So if you are looking in your neighborhood and you're looking at your social club or your country club or wherever, and you think, well, I'm barely making it. All these other people have much nicer cars. They spend much more money than I do. My kids are, barely going to the best schools, and I'm having to, come up with all this extra money. I'm having to cut back on all my services. My maid comes every once in a while. The deal is that you're getting a distorted view because you're looking at a little teeny tiny group of people who already are in this little teeny tiny 6% group. And yeah, once you get in that group, there's going to be like everything else, levels upon levels, right? So, if I make $100,000 a year, then yeah, I'm going to feel stressed out if I'm hanging out with people who are making, $400,000 a year. If I make $400,000 a year and I'm hanging out with people who make, $4 million a year, I'm stressed out. I feel bad. They got 3 vacation homes and they just told me about this great trip they took to Fiji, and I don't have any of that. They have a plane, a private plane. I have a private plane. My private plane is not as awesome as theirs. Look, I've talked about this in many different programs under many different topics and conditions because it always comes up. You will never win the game of having the most. Because even if you get to the very, very top, I'm the wealthiest person in the world, yay, look at me, it's temporary. For every Bill Gates or every Warren Buffett, there's a Carlos Slim, and for every Carlos Slim, there's somebody else right behind him. And over time, it never stays the same. It won't. It's just the nature of, life. So what I'm saying is this. Yes, do people have more stuff than you do, no matter how much money you have right now listening to this? Yes, I know that. Do we all, every single person listening to this, the person who makes $250,000, the person who makes $25,000, does every one of those groups of people, does every individual have to make sacrifices? Yes. The difference, of course, is if you're hanging out, and by hang out I mean, sometimes socially you're hanging out, right? But also the people you live around. So typically the more money you make, then you go out and you say to yourself, look, if I make, $100,000 a year, then my expectation will be I'm going to take ideally about a third of my income and use that on my housing costs. And that's going to allow me to either to purchase or to rent a much more expensive home than somebody who makes $30,000 a year, right? And once I move into an expensive neighborhood around other expensive houses, then of course I'm going to be skewed by what I see other neighbors doing. But what I'm saying is that what you're looking at is a little teeny tiny group of people who have all been very fortunate. And I would argue that if you are in the $100,000 group or over, that you've been fortunate. And that you need to remember that. I've done so many other programs about being of service, about gratitude and appreciation. And what I'm saying is it tends to happen. And a lot of this is anecdotal. I've earned over the six figures for, golly, at this point, I want to say, 15, 16 years. It's been a while, right? The majority of my adult earning time, so since I was in my 20s, I've been in that group. And what tends to happen is, like I was describing, no matter who you are, you get acclimated to how you live, and you start to look around and see how other people live, and you start to think to yourself, well, maybe I should buy one more house, I've done a whole other series of programs about dealing with that situation. So much, you kind of hit your saturation point. But what I'm saying is that this should be a wake-up call. It is not a myth. It is an accurate, based on a primary source, that if you're making $100,000, six figures or more, then you are in the teeny tiny group of individuals. You make more than 93% of everybody else in the country. You need to be aware of that, so that if you start feeling negative or stressed, if you start looking and feeling like I'm not happy, okay, what do we need to adjust? And part of it is, I think, is constantly reminding ourselves, look at the good fortune. Look at this good fortune. For those of us who would like to be in that 6%, then there's a whole bunch of other programs that many have already out about your resume, if you're going to look through employment as your primary way to do that, about different types of professional opportunities, educational options, entrepreneurial. Certainly that's one of the things that I've done, is be a little teeny tiny small business owner. But that's what I'm trying to argue, is that if you're in the group as a small group, and I would argue that we should be appreciative of that. If we would like to be in the group, it's a teeny tiny group to get into, and there's going to be fierce and intense competition to get there. And when I talk to people, when I'm doing coaching or mentoring or things of that nature, and people say, yeah, that's the goal, I say, great, I love it, right? And then I talk to them a little bit about how competitive it is to get either a job or to have your businesses or other investments get you to the point of that income. And that's because everybody is competing for this. And remember, this is men, this is women, this is the 25-year-old, this is the 55-year-old, it's everybody. And it's not that it's magic, it's just an easy way to remember, it's like a simple symbol of, hey, accomplishment, if you will. But it's not easy to get a $100,000 job just because the numbers are teeny tiny of distribution. We just talked about this. That's the reality. I also put in the show notes some of the average. You're trying to, if you're curious, what's the average person make? Well, average is decided several different ways, right? We could have the median or the mean. And so the median income is $26,197, and the mean is $38,337. So if you feel like, am I average? Okay, if you're making somewhere around $26,000, and I'll even go up to somewhere around $38,000, yes, you're average. You're doing well. Good job. If you make less than that, then that tells you, okay, maybe I want to do a little bit more to reach that level. If you make more than that, let's say you make $40,000, okay, then you're above average. And as you move up that, if you make 50,000 or you make 70,000 or whatever, it's the same thing I was saying a few minutes ago. Once you're over 100, you're just getting smaller and smaller groups of people that are in your group. And if you feel like you can't make it, then you need to look and see what you're spending your money on, because you can make it. Because if you're one person, then you make over the $100,000, you basically are earning what 4 full-time average workers in the country earn. And if you claim you can't make it on that, then you're not being realistic, and it's also a bit disrespectful. It's the same thing. If you're earning 60,000, that's over what 2 workers make. So you can do this, but you got to look at what you're spending your money on. You're not going to be able to spend your money on the same thing that maybe somebody who has $20 million to spend their money on. And those are the other decisions you need to look at. But I hope this has been helpful. I really want you to orient your decisions in life with data, good data, right? So is it going to rain? I don't know. Do I need my umbrella? Let me find out. Let me not just guess. It's sort of like that with this. The $100,000 is a fine goal, or if that's something that's been in your rearview mirror, then great. But you should have some level then of comfort in your life if you are in this group, in the 6% and smaller group, depending on how high your income goes. This should be a reality check. So thank you for joining me. As always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information.